Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage the chair of the executive committee of the Olayan Financing Company, Ms. Lubna Olayan, and the chairman and CEO of BlackRock, Mr. Larry Fink.
Good morning, everyone. Larry, it's always good to see you, and especially here at the FII.
Lubna, it's great to be here, and it's always great to be in the kingdom.
Thank you. You bring a special perspective about investments, and everyone values your opinion. BlackRock is one of the largest asset management company in the world, 7 trillion. But through your annual letters, you act as the conscience of Wall Street. So in our conversation, we agreed that we will touch on many of the letters that Larry wrote. And actually, we're all waiting for his 9th letter. But I would certainly first like to answer some of the questions that the organizers have asked us. So the first question is, what is your view on the markets today, given the current geopolitical and economic risks? Are markets pricing appropriately?
Well, I think you heard from the other presentations that there is obviously great uncertainty, but I would say markets are pretty efficient. Even with negative interest rates and low interest rates, I think capital formation continues to grow. I don't see a great deal of misallocation of capital because of low interest rates. We see China continuing to grow at the high 5s, low 6. We see the United States consumer has not been this strong in 10 years, and so consumption in the United States will continue to drive the U.S. economy to be about 2%. I must say CEO confidence is very low, and Europe continues to stumble along, but you have pockets of Europe that are doing quite well, like Netherlands and France and the Nordics, and so overall the world's fine. And I do believe markets, because of accommodative central bank behavior, the beginning to seeing fiscal policy change, especially in Netherlands. We're starting to see more positive change in some of the emerging countries, and including here in the kingdom. And so I would say the world in 2020 will witness higher equity markets.
Higher equity?
Higher.
Wow.
The markets are, the fear that we see is enormous. I think Ray Dalio talked about that. The amount of cash that's sitting in the sidelines is at record levels, and I would say more people have de-risked than stayed in the markets.
And why did you say CEO confidence low? I'll tell you, in the Arab world, we have a saying that capital is a coward. So, and I think many people sometimes are afraid to invest because of the geopolitical risks. But why do you say CEOs are?
Well, I think CEOs have to, when they do capital allocation, they're looking at returns out 5, 7, 10 years. And I do believe whether it's a trade uncertainty, the geopolitical uncertainty, and I would also say I'm much more worried about the social issues that we're seeing throughout the world, and the rise of social media and the impact of organized protesting we're witnessing in very different ways. And so I think CEOs right now are more reluctant to invest. They're more reluctant because they don't know where technology is going to take their business. But the bold CEOs are putting money to work. They're investing where they see opportunities. The bold CEOs are seeing opportunities maybe through acquisitions. And so there is a reason why some companies consistently outperform. And let's be clear, there are a lot of bad companies in the world too that are operating. So I think the bold companies will continue to transform the world.
This brings us to one of your themes in your letters, which is a company's purpose. You have always emphasized that you like to invest in a company that has purpose and that's focused on ESG. So how does the purpose factor into your decision in investment?
Well, I was very pleased to see this past August, the Business Roundtable is now adapting things that I've been writing about for the last few years. We see real evidence now that companies that are focusing on their purpose, which I'll describe in a minute, are companies that have systematically are outperforming the weaker companies. We don't have necessarily a strong framework of analysis in the sustainability side or in the E side.
So we need better metrics.
We're going to have to create better metrics. And this will be somewhat of my focus in my next year letter.
Which we all look forward to reading in January.
Yeah, I got to finish it first, but it's almost done. But what I said very loudly, and we're seeing facts in that, and that is purpose of a company equals profitability. A company that focuses on all their stakeholders, their employees, they focus on their clients and the needs of the clients and the outcomes of clients. More importantly, in this new world of more deglobalization, it requires more connection with the community where you operate. Mm-hmm. So in Saudi, you must be Saudi. In China, you must be Chinese. In America, you must be American. Those companies who are able to navigate, working with their young millennials, they're working with their client base, working in the communities where they operate. These are the winning companies, and these are the companies that will be able to produce more sustainability in their profits. We hope, though, that we're going to make sustainability of the world and the economies a strong one, and the only way to doing that, in my mind, is focusing on environmental issues, social issues, and governance issues.
And as you have seen, we've seen millennials now more interview companies and choose companies with purpose. And
Lubna, there are young employees who have been in my firm 6 months who have no problem coming up to me and telling me how I should run the company.
As long as it's not arrogance.
It's not arrogance. It's actually, they're doing it with a positive spirit. The young millennials, the Gen X, are changing the world much faster than I certainly did at their age.
It's true. Okay. You and I have had the opportunity to discuss this topic before, and it is, in my view, one of the most important that we really should address: inequality and the wealth gap. Recent studies of the top 350 American companies have shown that the average pay between the CEO and average worker was 60 times more that of the CEO in the 60s. Sorry, it was 20 times more in the 60s, and in 2018, it is 280 times. And we have seen how much inequality has played a role in many parts of the world. Riots starts everywhere for a trivial reason, even increase in cost of WhatsApp, Subway.
Taxi WhatsApp.
Yeah, so we have seen that all over, from Latin America, the Arab world, Europe, France, and some pockets in the US. Why do you think inequality has increased? And a follow-up question, do you think we, the private sector, has contributed to that?
Well, I want to look at it from two lenses. I think what you said is totally correct. but let's look at it in a more macro lens first and then get down to the level that you said. On a macro level, what that conversation misses is more human beings have risen to a middle class in the world than any time in humanity. Globalization has elevated more people in India, in China, in parts of Africa, in the GCC region. So let's not forget, globalization has lifted so many human beings to the highest standard of living, and we've never seen this in our history of mankind. At the same time, we are witnessing huge disparities in income, and so it's certainly uneven and imperfect. So there is no question there is going to be a greater need to focus on how to elevate more. So we have more inclusive capitalism. If we don't have more inclusive capitalism, we're seeing in very parts of the world where we're going to have government focusing on that change. One of the reasons why I write this letter, if capitalism and businesses don't try to solve some of these issues in their own companies, we're going to have government telling us what to do. And I believe it's far better for us to be the elevator in trying to find ways to doing it. And the only way we could continue to do that at a corporate level, especially for public companies, is to continue to drive better education for your workforce, trying to drive more skill training in your workforce, and then begin the process of greater and greater elevation of their wages and their benefits. But we have to address this. It is critical. I think this is one of the reasons why I applaud the Business Roundtable in how they are now redefining corporate purpose. Historically, it was just profits. And now, as we start focusing on the lens of purpose of multiple stakeholders, of your employees, of your community, those two, things like the disparity of wages, the disparity of income has to be addressed. And if we don't address it, government will, or society will.
Society.
And society is empowered by social media. They're able to quickly organize large-scale protesting on issues that matter to them, whether it is taxing WhatsApp or rising subway wages or what we are witnessing more and more in the United States, because it's happening even more in the United States, daily protesting on climate and climate change and climate issues. And I do believe, as capitalists, if we don't focus on climate change, we are going to be living with massive stranded cost losses. With the success of technology and the transformation of technology in renewables, we are now witnessing dramatic change in the utilization of renewables. In my conversations here in Saudi, in Kuwait, in Abu Dhabi, in other parts of the region, there is no reason why much of the electricity should be not powered by wind and solar, and then use much of the hydrocarbons that you produce to sell overseas. We're going to continue to have need for hydrocarbons because of airplanes, because of large trucks. So I'm not worried about the future of hydrocarbons, but when you have an opportunity to transform your electrical power grids and other things like that, and to have more sustainability in terms of automobiles and powering cities, that's how we have to make a difference. And so it all comes back. And if we're able to build those infrastructures, we're going to be raising wages too, by the way. And so we need to create more public-private opportunities and infrastructure build out. In almost every place in the world, I see a woeful need for the expansion of infrastructure, and no worse than the United States with $2 trillion of deferred maintenance. So we can raise the bar, we can raise wages, we can reduce this, but we need to do this with long-termism, with long-term planning. And as I've wrote in my last year's letter, short-termism is becoming more the conversation, not long-termism. And The problem is the short-termism is heavily the narrative of so many democracies right now. And we need leadership at the corporate level, and we need leadership at the government level on long-term solutions to solve these problems.
Most definitely, most definitely. If we move to another theme that you have brought that caught my eye, and it is the intergenerational wealth that is going to move from the baby boomers to the millennials. And you estimate it to 24 trillion.
A lot of money.
A lot of money. Have we, in your opinion, prepared the millennials and the future leaders to be a responsible custodian of this money? And do you see us having to do anything in order to guide and make sure that this money goes in the right place?
Well, I would answer that question in two ways, too. For a large part of the wealthy, and I'm not talking about the super wealthy, much of that money that they're sitting with right now probably will not be transferred to their children. It will probably be used to pay for longevity and long-term health care. I mean, we are not calculating what the cost of longevity. Longevity should be a blessing, so I'm all in favor of living longer, and I think we all are. But we need to also make sure, can we afford longevity? Do we have the social systems to prepare for longevity? And so some of this intergenerational money will not be passed on because we're going to be living longer, we're going to have more, we're turning deadly diseases into chronic diseases, and chronic diseases cost a lot of money. And so much of that will be spent that way. For the super wealthy, where there is an opportunity, or in societies where there's great retirement benefits to help during the periods of retirement with longevity, I don't know if we've done enough. I don't believe we have helped the millennials understand the long process of managing money for the long term. We spend way too much time focusing on, is the market going up or down? What's going to happen in the next year? You know, for a millennial who is going to have 30 to 40 years of work in front of him or her, what's happening this year doesn't matter.
Sure.
And this is one of my big issues. We are not focusing on long-term outcomes. We're not helping men and women, young and old, focusing on this long responsibility of navigation for tens of years. And this is one thing we have to do. In fact, the biggest question in the world, in my mind, related to longevity, related to aging, and related to retirement, is going to be China. China has to answer that question, or if China doesn't answer that question, China will not fully develop its future. So I'll end it there. Do I have 2 minutes to ask you a question?
Please do.
So last night I was at a wonderful dinner, and I saw vast changes in the social structure of the Saudi society. You are now a chairwoman of a major organization. The transformation of women in this country is amazing. Lubna, tell me and tell everybody, what are you seeing from the lens of a leader of a business for over 30 years now in Saudi, and how you're playing probably as pivotal role in this movement as anyone, but where do you see it's going, and can it sustain itself with this speed? What I'm surprised is how quick the changes.
As a Saudi, I'm also surprised by the speed. I have to tell you, I've been you're trying to give me 36 years working in here.
But you only look 50, so I can't.
And I have to say that I couldn't have imagined I will see where we are vis-a-vis where women are. And the speed recently of the change has been phenomenal. But there is still a lot more to do. We have 23% of the workforce, of the women choose to be in the workforce. Our goal to reach the world average, we have to be around 50%. Right. So we still have a way to go, but we're going there. Mobility had tremendous improvement in what is happening. Allowing women to work in any area, in any field, has had tremendous. I have to tell you, recently, last week, Saudi Arabia was ranked as the top performer and top improver in the world by the World Bank in terms of the first ranking. And it moved in the ease of doing business from 92 to 62nd place. So it moved 30 points. I believe a main reason for that is the inclusion of women much more in the workforce, the mobility of women. And, many of our startups, the entrepreneurs, 39% are women. So I see a great future, and it's true. You see much more women, you see the freedom. There is a lot to do, but I hope
it's just the beginning.
It's just the beginning. Well, time is up, and I just want to thank you, Larry. It's always a pleasure.
No, thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.